Salah. Salah is the second pillar of Islam, and its Arabic root means connection, a direct line between a human being and God. It was prescribed during the night journey, the Isra wal Miraj, when the Prophet Muhammad was initially given 50 prayers per day. Through a series of negotiations with God, guided by the Prophet Ibrahim, that number was reduced to 5, with the promise that each would carry the reward of 10. The prayer requires ritual purity through wudu, a facing toward Mecca, and a declared intention. It is built from units called raka'at, each a choreographed sequence of standing, bowing, and prostrating. An estimated 1.8 billion Muslims perform this across 5 daily intervals, making it the most consistently repeated religious act on earth. Fajr. Fajr, the dawn prayer, opens the day with 2 obligatory raka'at and a window that closes at sunrise, sometimes as narrow as 60 minutes, depending on the season and how far north you live. Its call to prayer includes a phrase said at no other time of day. As-salatu khayrun minan naum. Prayer is better than sleep, announced into the pre-dawn darkness while most of the city is still unconscious. The Quran singles it out directly, stating in Surah 1778 that the recitation at dawn is witnessed, interpreted by classical scholars as witnessed by the angels of the night and the angels of the day simultaneously. At the moment they change shifts. Missing it intentionally carries a weight in Islamic tradition that missing Dhuhr does not. 2 Sunnah rakat before it are described in Hadith as more precious than the world and everything in it. Dhuhr. Dhuhr arrives after the sun crosses its peak and lasts several hours, making it the most forgiving prayer in terms of timing. It is 4 obligatory rakat, all performed in silence. No audible recitation, just the worshipper and the words. On Fridays, it disappears entirely, replaced by Jumu'ah for Muslim men, making Friday the only day the full Dhuhr is not prayed at all. 4 Sunnah rakat before it, and 2 after, are among the confirmed supplementary prayers the Prophet maintained consistently. It is the longest of the standard daily prayers, and its silence gives it a quality different from Fajr or Maghreb. There is no external anchor, no voice connecting the congregation, just rows of people moving through identical sequences in their own private quiet. Asr, the afternoon prayer, is 4 raka'at performed silently, and it is surrounded by more jurisprudential controversy than any other daily prayer. The Hanafi school calculates its start time using a different shadow length formula than the Shafi'i, Maliki, and Hanbali schools, a difference that can produce a gap of over an hour between the 2 positions. The entire 103rd chapter of the Quran, Surah Al-Asr, is named for it, and some scholars argue God swears by this specific prayer in its opening verse. Its warning is the starkest of any prayer. A hadith in Sahih Bukhari states that whoever misses Asr, it is as though he lost his family and his wealth. Arriving before the sun sets, even by a single rakah, is enough to count it as on time. Maghreb. Maghreb begins the moment the sun disappears below the horizon and has the shortest window of all 5 prayers, roughly 60 to 90 minutes before it closes. 3 obligatory raka'at, the only odd number in the daily prayers, giving it a structure unlike any other. The first 2 are recited aloud, the third in silence, and between them sits a full seated position that breaks the rhythm in a way you feel physically after a day of silent prayers. During Ramadan, the Maghrib Adhan is the sound that ends the fast, the precise moment across the Muslim world when water and dates are raised simultaneously by hundreds of millions of people. Its narrow window has made it historically the prayer scholars most warn against delaying, because unlike Dhuhr, there's almost no margin. Isha. Isha closes the day with 4 silent raka'at and a window that technically extends until midnight, or until dawn according to a minority scholarly position. The Prophet reportedly disliked sleeping before it and talking excessively after it, framing it as a threshold, the moment the day ends for a Muslim, not when the clock does. Despite its flexibility, It is by most accounts the most commonly missed of the 5 daily prayers. Its timing disappears entirely in extreme northern latitudes during summer. A problem Islamic legal bodies, including the European Council for Fatwa, and research have issued formal rulings on, creating multiple calculation methods for Muslims in places like Finland and northern Canada. What follows it is Witr, and the two are inseparable in practice. Sunnah Mu'akkada. The confirmed supplementary prayers, known as Sunnah Mu'akkada, are 12 raka'at attached to specific daily prayers, 2 before Fajr, 4 before Dhuhr, and 2 after Maghreb, and 2 after Isha. They are not obligatory, but abandoning them regularly without reason is considered blameworthy. The 2 sunnah before Fajr are described in a hadith from Sahih Muslim as more valuable than the world and everything in it, a claim that stops you if you think about it, since that includes everything that has ever existed or will exist on earth. A hadith in Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah states that maintaining all 12 consistently earns a house in paradise. They function, according to some scholars, as a spiritual correction, compensating for any deficiency in the obligatory prayers that preceded them. Sunnah Ghair Muakkada. Beneath the confirmed supplementary prayers sits a quieter layer. The non-emphasized optional prayers, known as Sunnah Ghair Muakkada. These include 4 raka'at before Asr, 2 before Maghrib, and 2 before Isha, among others, though the exact list varies by madhab. Performing them earns reward. Skipping them earns nothing negative. They represent a middle zone in Islamic worship that most introductory education never reaches. Neither obligatory nor purely voluntary, but something in between that the 4 major schools classify differently enough that what one tradition calls confirmed, another calls non-emphasized. Their existence reflects a core Islamic idea. Obligation is the floor, not the ceiling. The space between the minimum and the maximum is vast, and these prayers live in that space quietly. Witr. Witr is performed after Isha and before Fajr, always ending on an odd number of rak'at. The name itself means odd. It can be 1 rak'ah, 3, 5, 7, or more. The Prophet never abandoned it, even while traveling, which places it in a different category from most supplementary prayers. The Hanafi school considers it wajib, a legal category unique to that school sitting between obligatory and recommended, while the majority of scholars consider it sunnah muakkada. Its final rak'ah contains the kunut supplication, a specific dua recited in a raised hands position before bowing, used particularly in the second half of Ramadan in many traditions. Whether a missed witr needs to be made up, and how, is debated. It is the prayer that formally closes the night. Tarawih. Tarawih is prayed only in Ramadan, after Isha and before Witr, and it is the prayer that fills mosques to capacity once a year in cities where they stand empty the other 11 months. The number of raka'at is one of the most discussed numbers in Islamic practice, 8 or 20, depending on which tradition you follow. The Prophet initiated congregational Tarawih, and then deliberately stopped, according to a narration in Sahih Bukhari, out of concern it would become obligatory. It was Umar ibn al-Khattab who later revived and formalized it. In Mecca and Medina, 20 raka'at are performed each night of Ramadan, completing the entire Quran, all 604 pages, distributed across 30 nights. The night the recitation finishes, Khatm al-Quran, is often the most emotionally charged moment of the Islamic calendar. Tahajud. Tahajud is performed in the last third of the night, after sleeping, and no voluntary prayer carries more weight in Islamic tradition. There is no fixed number, 2, 4, 8 rakat, always in pairs, but the time matters more than the count. A hadith in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim describes the last third of the night as the time when God descends to the lowest heaven and asks who is calling upon him, who is asking forgiveness, who is seeking provision, and responds. The Quran commands it directly for the Prophet in Surah 1779, making it the only voluntary prayer with a Quranic obligation attached, and voluntary only for everyone else. Classical scholars treated it as the clearest indicator of a person's private relationship with God, because nobody is watching and nothing is requiring it. Duha. Duha is prayed after the sun has fully risen, roughly 15 to 20 minutes after sunrise, and lasts until just before Dhuhr. Minimum 2 rakat, with 8 considered particularly virtuous. A hadith in Sahih Muslim frames it in terms of the human body. Every joint owes a charitable act each morning, and 2 rakat of duha satisfies the entire debt. All 360 joints settled at once. It is also called Salat al-Awabin, the prayer of those who constantly return to God, a name that gives it a character, different from the structured daily prayers. Because it falls during normal waking hours rather than at dawn or midnight, it is among the most accessible of the voluntary prayers for working people. It asks for almost nothing in terms of scheduling and returns, according to the texts, an extraordinary amount. Ishraq. Ishraq is performed at the very beginning of that same morning window, 15 to 20 minutes after sunrise, and is either a distinct prayer or an earlier version of Duha, depending on which scholar you ask. What makes it remarkable is the reward attached to the ritual that precedes it. A person who prays Fajr in congregation, then sits in the mosque in remembrance of God until the sun has fully risen, then prays 2 raka'at, receives a reward described in a narration in Tirmidhi as equivalent to a complete Hajj and Umrah. The hadith's grading is debated. Some classify it as Hasan, others as weak, but it has been practiced continuously across Muslim-majority societies for centuries. That a 45-minute commitment might carry the reward of a pilgrimage to Mecca is the kind of equation that changes how people spend their mornings. Tahiyyatul Masjid. Tahiyyatul Masjid, the mosque greeting prayer, is 2 raka'at performed before sitting down upon entering any mosque. The Prophet commanded in explicit hadith that no one should sit until they have prayed them. Unlike almost every other prayer, it is triggered by location, not time. It can be performed at any hour, making it one of the few prayers that defies the structured daily rhythm. The Shafi'i school holds that it should be prayed even during the 3 normally prohibited times, at sunrise, at the sun's zenith, and at sunset, because the sanctity of the mosque overrides the general prohibition. Most people who grow up with a basic Islamic education never encounter this prayer in any formal instruction, despite it being directly commanded in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. You walk in, you pray, then you sit. Salatul Janazah. Salatul Janazah, the funeral prayer, is a collective obligation. If enough Muslims perform it over the deceased, all are absolved. If no one does, all who knew and could have attended are sinful. It contains no ruku and no sujud, no bowing, no prostrating, making it structurally unlike any other Islamic prayer. It is 4 standing takbirs, a declaration of Allahu Akbar 4 times, with specific supplications for the deceased between them. The Prophet performed a version of it in absentia for the Negus of Abyssinia, a Christian king who had sheltered early Muslims, establishing what scholars point to as evidence that the prayer can sometimes be performed for those at a distance. The body lies in front of the rose. The prayer is brief. The silence between each Allahu Akbar is its own kind of weight. Salatul Jumu'ah. Salatul Jumu'ah replaces Dhuhr entirely on Fridays and is obligatory for free, adult, resident Muslim men. The only prayer whose obligation is tied simultaneously to gender, legal status, and geography. Surah al-Jumu'ah, chapter 62 of the Quran, commands believers directly. When the call is made, hasten to the remembrance of God and leave your trade. 2 rakat follow 2 khutbahs, sermons that are considered part of the prayer itself, not a preamble to it. A hadith narrated in Abu Dawud warns that missing 3 consecutive Jumu'ah, prayers without excuse, results in a seal being placed over the heart, though the grading of this narration is debated by scholars. It is worth noting that Jumu'ah is not an Islamic Sabbath. Commerce and work resume immediately after the prayer ends, and the Quran says so explicitly in the same passage that commands attendance. Salatul Eid. Salatul Eid is performed twice a year, on Eid al-Fitr, the morning after Ramadan ends, and on Eid al-Adha, the morning of the Feast of Sacrifice. 2 rakat, with 7 extra takbirs in the first and 5 in the second, according to the Shafi'i and Hanbali schools, though the Hanafi school counts differently. The Prophet preferred an open field over the mosque for this prayer specifically, and this practice continues today in countries where tens of thousands gather in stadiums, parks, and city squares at dawn. Women and children are explicitly encouraged to attend. Classical hadith texts record that even menstruating women were told to come and stand apart, to be present for the gathering without participating in the prayer itself. On Eid al-Adha, the animal sacrifice should not precede the prayer, according to most scholars. The prayer comes first. Salatul Istisqa. Salatul Istisqa is the rain prayer. 2 raka'at performed outdoors during drought, with the imam delivering 2 khutbahs, and then, in one of the most visually striking ritual acts in Islam, reversing his cloak, turning it inside out as a symbolic appeal for circumstances to change. The Prophet performed it in an open field, and the hadith narrated in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim reports that rain began falling before the congregation had left the prayer ground. It can be repeated across multiple consecutive days if rain does not come. Saudi Arabia and other Muslim-majority states have issued official national declarations of istisqa during recent droughts, making it one of the few ancient Islamic rituals still enacted at the level of state policy. It is drought made into liturgy, collective helplessness formalized into form and gesture. Salatul Kusuf and Kusuf. The eclipse prayers, Kusuf for solar eclipses and Kusuf for lunar, are among the most structurally unusual prayers in the Islamic system, because each rakah contains 2 bowing positions instead of 1, making every unit of prayer twice as long as normal. The Prophet used the solar eclipse explicitly to correct a pre-Islamic belief. A hadith in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim records him declaring that the sun and moon do not eclipse for the death or birth of any person. The prayer continues until the eclipse ends, meaning its length is set by an astronomical event, not a muezzin or a clock. For a lunar eclipse, whether the prayer requires congregation or can be performed individually is disputed. The Shafi'i school encourages congregation, while the Hanafi school treats it as individual. The sky itself determines when it is over. Salatul Istikhara. Salatul Istikhara is 2 raka'at, followed by a specific supplication, asking God to facilitate a matter if it is good, and to remove it if it is harmful. A formal surrender of the worshipper's own preference to divine knowledge. The Prophet taught it according to Jabir ibn Abdullah, who narrated in Sahih Bukhari that he taught it for every matter the way he taught Quranic surahs, meaning for everything, not just marriage. The most common misconception surrounding it is that it should produce a dream or a feeling pointing toward the right choice. Scholars across traditions correct this consistently. The outcome that unfolds afterward, the door that opens or closes, the circumstance that becomes easy or difficult, is the answer. It can be repeated. There is no single correct number of times. The decision that eventually happens is the response. Salatul Tawbah. Salatul Tawbah is 2 rakat performed after committing a sin, followed by sincere repentance. And its hadith, transmitted by Abu Bakr al-Siddiq and found in Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi, makes a direct promise. Any Muslim who sins, performs wudu, prays 2 rakat, and seeks forgiveness will be forgiven by God. The hadith is classified as sahih by Al-Albani. There is no fixed time for it and no designated window. It is performed whenever the need arises, day or night. The repentance itself requires 3 things, according to scholarly consensus: genuine remorse, ceasing the act, and a sincere intention not to return to it. The prayer is purely remedial, a reset built into the system. It is not announced, not congregational, not attached to any calendar. It exists entirely between a person and what they did. Salatul Tasbih. Salatul Tasbih is 4 raka'at containing 300 repetitions of a single glorification phrase. Subhana Allahi walhamdulillahi wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar. Distributed precisely across every standing, bowing, and prostrating position in each rak'ah. 15 in the standing recitation. 10 rising from bowing. 10 in each prostration. 10 between the 2 prostrations. The Prophet taught it to his uncle Abbas ibn Abd al-Muttalib, according to a narration in Abu Dawud and Ibn Majah, and described it as causing God to forgive all sins, past and future, minor and major, deliberate and accidental. Its hadith authenticity is one of the most debated in Islamic scholarship. Ibn al-Salah and others questioned it, while al-Hakim authenticated it. It is recommended once daily, or weekly, or monthly, or yearly, or at minimum once in a lifetime. A flexibility that is itself unusual. Across South Asian and Southeast Asian Muslim communities, it remains widely practiced. The prohibited times and the architecture of the day. 3 windows exist in every day when voluntary prayers are forbidden. At the moment of sunrise, when the sun stands exactly at its zenith, and at the moment of sunset. The Prophet explained in a hadith narrated in Sahih Muslim that these are the times when those who worship the sun directed their devotion toward it. And Islam marks itself as different by prohibiting prayer at those exact moments. Missed obligatory prayers, according to the majority scholarly position, can be made up even within these windows, though the Hanafi school is more restrictive. What this framework reveals, when placed beside everything that came before it, is that the 5 daily prayers are not 5 additions to a secular day. They are 5 anchors around which the day is constructed. The time between them is not free time with prayer inserted. It is prayer time with everything else arranged around it. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.